Yeah, you think it's easy? America finding its way. This is ThinkTech. I'm Jay Fidell, and we're talking about what is going on, what in the world is going on with Trump. But we want to follow up on a little piece we had yesterday that Tim and I were discussing, and namely the Joe Biden's removal of troops from Afghanistan by, of course, the iconic date, September 11th, 2021. Big article, a certain amount of pushback from military retired people like General Petraeus. But today had another article that was very interesting, and you have to consider them both. Tim, you want to talk about that?
Well, are we talking about the Afghanistan or the Russian troop buildup and the response of the Biden administration? What side do you want to take?
The Afghanistan, we'll talk about both, but the Afghanistan withdrawal and the Biden response today to those who would oppose that.
Yeah, well, okay. So again, this is a continuation of Donald Trump's policy. And Donald Trump, if you remember 2016, he made no bones about getting out of Afghanistan. And so he did what he accused Obama of doing, and that was he pre-announced a withdrawal date. And they, even Donald Trump said that's the worst thing you can do. All you're doing is inviting, the Taliban in, and they'll just wait you out. And so, what did Donald Trump do? He announced a May date. Well, Joe Biden has basically said, okay, we're gonna stay with the course on that policy, but we're gonna push it out to all troops out by September the 11th. So that's what he's done. That's what he's following through on something that's already been established. So. Where was the calamity when Donald Trump announced it? Where were the generals and all the people criticizing that particular announcement and policy? There was some, but there wasn't a whole lot. So why now Joe Biden should take the heat for it? He shouldn't.
Some generals are Trumpers, Anyway, yeah. So is it? I mean, in retrospect, a day later, is it the right move?
Yeah, it's the right move. That's not to say that we'll be completely out of the game. We have satellite surveillance technologies there. If things really got bad, I suppose that drone warfare could be reintroduced. Although that was the Obama's nightmare in the field, was that unfortunately with drone warfare, you kill non-combatants, and that is a public relations nightmare. And that's one of the reasons that Afghanistan wants us out, because we killed non-combatants. And it was, not on purpose, but that's collateral damage, that they say in the quest for warfare.
Mm-hmm. I thought his the story in the Times today is interesting because he fired back. I hate to use that metaphor. He fired back at those who would oppose the withdrawal and said, "Don't worry, we have the technology." We have the eye in the sky. We have these satellite ways of monitoring what is happening in Afghanistan and every country. And of course, we have drones that can do things, as they have been. So even in our absence, even after we leave, don't worry, it's not out of our control. We do have a certain amount of control over any place and every place, including Afghanistan. Do you think that was an adequate response? Does it hold water?
Well, we're trying to get out gracefully. So yes, it was an adequate response. Also, if, at a snap of a finger, I suppose special forces could be brought in, SEAL teams left and right could be brought in if need be. But then again, you have to, if you're in there for more than a week or so, you got to have support. You have to have logistics. And there's where you start getting a troop buildup back again. So, I think Joe Biden has done a fairly good response to it. And, of all the options and all the potential responses you could have heard, I think these are minimal. These are what you should expect from generals, that, they could have kept playing the game and kept trying to negotiate with the Taliban and just keep lingering the date on and on and on, and kept 2,600 troop levels there for years to come.
That's not a good solution.
It's not
We
a
have
good
to do,
solution.
we have to do better than that. So
Yeah.
the other thing you mentioned, which we should take a moment on, is the troop buildup in the Crimean area and in Ukraine by Russia. And what motivates that, what it means, and of course, President Biden's response to that, because now he's going to lay serious sanctions on Russia for that, for Navalny, and of course for hacking the U.S. and messing with its election systems.
Yeah, I think there's the overt game, and then there's the subvert game. And although Joe Biden, the White House, is declaring that it was the meddling into the 2020 election from Russia, and the Sky, what was it called? Sky SolarWinds hack. They're citing those as the two major reasons for why these sanctions would be put in place. But don't kid yourself. It is a direct response to this 80,000 troop buildup along the Crimea border, of which 40,000 are already in Crimea, and then there's 40,000 additional troops along this borderline. So there's the game, and then there's the game.
Yeah, but one thing is clear, Tim, and all of you, that's Tim Apicella, Winston Welch, and Stephanie Dalton, is that where we have been looking at Russia sort of through the lens of what Trump has been doing, and seeing Putin as a monster who is in league with another monster, Trump. Now it seems to me that we're in a different place on Russia. It isn't so much Joe Biden versus Vladimir Putin. We're in a different process, and we have to follow it. We have to cover it on this show and otherwise to see what's going on. And if you guys have any connections in Moscow, let's talk to them. Anyway, Winston, how do you feel about that? Joe Biden doing the right thing and laying these pretty serious sanctions on Russia. These sanctions are intended to damage Russia's economy. And my reading of the Times article is that they will damage the Russian economy, a serious sanction.
I don't know. It's just one in a series of steps of sanctions against the people they want to sanction. But Russia does pose some serious challenges to the U.S. and in a way that it has always. There was kind of a lull there in the 90s after its collapse, but they want to be respected as in their sphere of influence, and so they're showing some muscle as best as they can. And we've seen these scenarios. Well, what if they've been buzzing over the Arctic, they've been buzzing over the Baltic or wherever it is, over Japan or the Sea of Japan or something, and so they're just trying to poke the I guess we're not the bear, they're the bear, whatever they're poking. They're just trying to see, okay, what's this Joe Biden made of? How is he going to react? What can we get away with? Same with the Chinese. I think there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, China's message to America, we're an equal now. That was on April 12th. And I think that what we've done now that we're coming up for air after 4 years to a different reality where the world is looking at us. And, I referenced an Anthony Blinken piece that was quite thoughtful a couple weeks ago, that the landscape has changed. We think America's still out there and it's got all the respect and everything that it used to have. And it's, these countries are saying, don't lecture us on voter integrity and democracy when you guys don't have it together yourselves. And that's reasonable on many levels, although I will live in this country any day, hands down, over Russia or China, and they're not in a position to lecture, but it provides useful PR for them. I would guess that over time they're going to see maybe a retreat to some spheres of traditional influence come back, maybe not as much as it used to be, but whether it's Taiwan with China and would America step up, or will they say, you know what, it's not worth it to engage China in on that? And the Crimea, America already said it wasn't worth it to engage. Did we slap sanctions on? Did we do this? Did we do that? Yes. If I were living in Ukraine right now, I would be a little bit worried. I'd be moving to the western part if I didn't want to be annexed to whatever Eastern Ukraine is going to be, and but anyway, there's some they're poking around to seeing what they can do. Afghanistan is an interesting one. This war has been going on for 20 years now, and it was endless, and it was just time for someone. I think, didn't Donald Trump say he was going to get us out of Afghanistan?
Oh, he had a plan to get out on May 1st.
Yeah, and this has just been a delayed thing, and so America's ability to strike when and where it needs to, as it likes, will it be diminished slightly by not having folks on the ground? Yes, I'm not a military strategist, but I think that as we can see just from any movies that are popularly available, that America has an incredible intelligence network of both human and mechanical means. So
I hope so. Sometimes we pat ourselves on the back and give ourselves more credit than we're really entitled to.
maybe
We are not quite as exceptional as we used to be or as we think we are. Stephanie, you have any thoughts on these things? What is the story with Russia these days, and how do you think it's unfolding?
Well, I certainly don't miss the Trump strategies of knee-jerk reaction or no reaction at all to the Russians in particular, knee-jerk to others since he didn't do that to Russia. And so welcome the Biden administration's thoughtful, measured, matched, appropriate, logical response to what Russia is doing. Now, so as the first gambit. Now, whether we're supposed to go to all-out nuclear war or not, I don't know over it. But what he's done is assert, the likelihood of reaction and consequences to Putin, and he hasn't had any of those in a long time. And I think by it being measured and thoughtful and not knee-jerk, that the seriousness of intent is more clearly communicated, and that that may be. Let's see how that is received by Russians. And
Yeah, let's see. We have to cover the story as it goes forward. I agree with you. The relief from having somebody thoughtful and determined, if you will, who remembers what he did the day before. That's very refreshing, because Trump was not thoughtful, and everything was ad hoc and on the moment. So let's talk more about Trump, Tim. That was our original intention. We called this "What in the World is Going On with Trump?" What is going on with Trump? We predicted, or at least we talked about predicting, that Trump would lose his mojo somewhere along the line. Is he losing his mojo, or is he knitting it up behind the scenes?
If you listen to Liz Cheney, and her direct quote is, Donald Trump, comes to the table with words of insurrection, not progression for the GOP. No, he's lost his mojo. But that's Liz Cheney. She sits tall in the saddle, and she's from Wyoming, and she doesn't take a whole lot of guff. And she stands out in the GOP as someone that rejects the party of insurrection, rejects the party of autocracy. And she I think, is one of the conservative Republicans that would like to get the party back on its track. So there's the Liz Cheneys out there. Some of them are still scared of their own shadow. They're still scared of what Donald Trump has threatened them in the past to do, which is to try to primary them, or God knows what else that he's threatened them with. But I think Donald Trump has lost his mojo. He's lost his microphone. He's lost his Twitter account. And people aren't as impassioned about what Donald Trump, thinks and who his enemy of the day is. I also think that, those who are, there's always a 33%, no matter what, that will be completely loyal, and they think the election was stolen and Joe Biden is the illegitimate president of the United States. That percentage will remain. The other percentage, somewhere between 33% and 45%, they're going to dissipate. They're going to move on. They're going to look for the next candidate. They're not interested in Donald Trump anymore, and those numbers will increase as time goes on. Does Donald Trump still have influence? Yes, unfortunately, tremendous amount of influence. But what again he does do is he shows time and time again that loyalty is a one-way street. Loyalty is only to Donald Trump and not reciprocated. Ask Matt Gaetz.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Winston, strikes me that if you compare the campaigns that Trump ran in 2016 and then again in 2020, he was playing out of the same playbook. There were similarities, echoes in 2020 of the kinds of things he did in 2016. And what I'm saying is, although certainly he's creative and he comes up with clever, if not too clever things, he runs a playbook, the same playbook. And I suggest to you, for your interest or your response, that he's running the same playbook now, except he's on a smaller platform. And as Tim says, his megaphone is smaller or maybe even gone. And query, can he do that? Can he do that with any level of success? Do everything on the moment, attack everyone in sight, everyone who does not demonstrate loyalty, try to intimidate people, and rely on this strange cult-like relationship with the base. Does the playbook work, or am I wrong? Is he not using the playbook?
Donald Trump is going to be Donald Trump. It's so refreshing not to have him in our faces every single second of the day. And what Stephanie was saying was like, we have this sane, responsible man in the White House who has, by the way, 50 years or 40 years of experience on foreign policy. He can take the long view, not just the what did I tweet 2 minutes ago view. He has this depth and breadth of experience and wisdom, and he's surrounded himself with capable, competent, hopefully non-sycophants that are just out for the good of our nation and our world. And
but that's not reaching everybody. That's not reaching his base. I mean, his base is not necessarily
I'm
rational.
not talking about the Donald. The Donald is done.
They don't do critical thinking.
It's going to go down, down, down. No, he's not.
Query whether the process you've described, which is an optimistic process, will have any effect, or whether Trump will still connect with his base and still have the same relationship with them, even though Biden is a much better leader.
Well, Biden is a much better leader. I mean, there's zero question about it. Just he's presidential, and that's getting the vote. That's the dogs voting with their voice right there. I mean, she's channeling.
Dog seems to agree with everything you say, Winston.
Well, not everything. No, she only when we're talking about this sort of stuff, she speaks up because she knows it's God's truth, and we are lucky to have this man in the White House right now. Whatever Donald Trump is, I mean, just when you say his name, it's just like, do we have to talk about that again? And I know he's there and he's gone, but he's not gone. But focusing on what we want more of, I think, is the way to go, because we're all sleeping better at nights. We're able to talk to our families and friends now and coworkers without having to walk on eggshells. We're reaching out. We're understanding we have a different scenario that we got to deal with right now. And 4 years from now, it's going to be a much different world still, and that little margin is going to get smaller and smaller. What does concern me is that you're going to have the smart, pretty, or handsome version of Donald Trump, who is much and not lazy and able to really manipulate the levers and play that violin, just the grievance violin, just so, in a way that will make him look like an amateur. That said, I mean, I think he's a brilliant politician, and but he's not going to be around in 4 years. He might still absolutely be an influence in the party. That's his party. The rest of the nation and the world has to move on with what's important for us.
Yeah, somebody said to me today, I see the light. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I see it there. I said, you need to go to your ophthalmologist. So Stephanie, how much of what Winston is saying do you agree with?
Well, I do agree with his praise for Biden and his way of talking about where Trump is now. I agree with that. And I think that 35%, 40% is going to be eroded over, but not just over time, as I think Winston guaranteeing us that it will, and that's a good thing. But mostly, it's going to erode as Trump's continued reactions, responses follow his niece Mary Trump's diagnoses of his pathology, mental pathology, where he's just doing these things that have worked for him all of his life with a chaos theory and knee jerk and no principles and no framework out of which.
Are you giving appropriate credit to the rest of the Republican Party? I mean, is he the entire Republican Party? So as he goes, they go? Or Mitch McConnell or others, who still want to win, who are still going to raise money and try to, get those seats? Where does he figure in all this?
I think that's interesting. Godzilla versus King Kong. I mean, you've got that.
But which one is Godzilla? Which one is King Kong?
Trump, who's going to persist? And I mean, one bet is neither, because hopefully Mitch is done and Trump will eventually, he will atrophy. It will atrophy because he's not offering anything.
You haven't said anything about him going to jail, by the way.
No, he may be in jail, but it's so unlikely because he's got all of these things he does. But the most important part is that
we're going to have to excuse you from the jury.
Not going to happen.
That dynamic going on between Godzilla and King Kong is that we've got this presidential administration now unleashing this comprehensive, goal-directed, values-laden, historically supported.
Okay, I'm not going to suggest anything about the ophthalmologist, but let me just point out, Tim, that voting rights doesn't look so good. Immigration reform doesn't look so good. What are the other ones that he's trying to get through? Gun control doesn't look like anything is going to happen on that. And there's other, appropriately progressive initiatives that are stuck. And it's in the Senate. And McConnell is going to do his thing. He's made it clear. Trump from the sidelines is campaigning against all of those initiatives, whatever that means. The filibuster doesn't. We talked about this on your show yesterday. And with all of that, the metronome of day to day goes by, nothing happens. This is not necessarily an ideal situation as you look forward to 2022. So it's not to say that Trump is just going to go away and blow away whether he goes to jail or not. It's the question of whether Congress and the institutions around the presidency will allow Biden to do anything, and whether at the end of the day these guys who are campaigning against and criticizing everything he does will prevail. Where are we on the continuum to 2022?
I think Joe Biden is acutely aware of what happened to President Barack Obama, that the metrodome of time passed and the GOP was successful of putting out one impression that they wanted to work with the Obama administration, but really had no intention of doing so. And we're seeing repeats of that with Mitch McConnell. And I think Joe Biden has finally read that playbook and is acutely aware of it. That's why I think what we're going to see is, with the infrastructure, we'll see probably a reconciliation process, budget reconciliation, and that will get passed in some form. But you're right, the voting rights bill, HD1, HR1, S1, that's off in the hinterlands. Gun control off in the hinterlands. Immigration reform hinterlands. And so what's the obvious answer? And that is filibuster reform. And who's going to be on top of that? Well, it's Joe Manchin. So there's going to be a concerted effort to bring Joe Manchin on board. And as Winston is famously cited, and the quotation is, a golden toilet in every household in West Virginia. That's what it might take. There it is. Hey,
there it is. All right, nice
How
work.
did that happen that quick?
Well, it's the power of imagination.
That's fascinating.
Boris, I mean,
you know what? That if Joe Biden got that in his district, in his state, he might just be on board to reform the filibuster. But again, Jen, nothing's going to happen unless the filibuster is reformed. It's not going to go away. It's not going to go away, but it needs to reform.
The problem, Winston, is that if Joe Biden does a great job, that's not going to necessarily bring people on the right side of the scale over to the left side. You're not going to see, great numbers of Republicans voting Democratic. That's not going to happen. What are they going to do if they are disenchanted with Trump?
What are they going to do if they're disenchanted with Trump? Well, you asked a question earlier to Stephanie, like, how is this compared to the Republican Party? There is no Republican Party as we understand it. There's this sort of rump element of, the Liz Cheneys of the world who spoke out and they a day late and a dollar short, and the Lisa Murkowskis and the.
What are they going to do? They're not going to vote with the Democrat. What are they going to do?
I don't know that that's true. And Joe Biden is not a radical leftist progressive. I mean, he's sort of fighting back the AOC wing and saying, no, you're not going to be able to get everything because we're appealing. The goal of my administration is to appeal to heal this nation and bring it together as best as I know how. And he is very much seeming to me like a very moderate, even conservative Democrat. I don't see him as, although his budget is pretty progressive. I don't see Joe Biden as he's a moderate.
So you're talking about the fringes. You're talking about the uncommitted Republicans who can be, enticed away from the Republican Party.
They're not on the fringes. They're in the middle, and they're the ones that actually, they were sick of this last 4 years. They were sick of the division and the rancor and the stupidity and having to defend the indefensible with their relatives and their friends.
If that's for Tim, tell him he's busy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what those are the people that are like, they might have voted Republican, they might have voted Democrat. I think Joe Biden offers an alternative to people that says, these aren't evil communists coming for your guns and your Bibles. This is just a nice,
I think what I hear you saying is that they're convertible. You think they're convertible, Stephanie? Can you get the Republicans or former Republicans, former Trump Republicans, and get them to vote Democratic in 2022?
There seems to be a progression. I mean, seems to be a path to being an independent, and then some of them have come Democrat. But I think that, yes, people are smart, and with their understanding of what they would have to face with another administration, and that the people that savaged the Capitol would be making the decisions or helping to make the decisions. I don't think any of us want to live by that chaos. And another thing is if Biden shows he really understands that if he gave the governor or the senator from West Virginia all of those golden toilets, the constituency would be put off because none of them have any plumbing. The majority of them don't even have a plumbing. They couldn't even use it if they got it. So I mean, there's showing. So it shows you that the surface level of what's been going on, and the level of the exchange is just so worn everybody out. Yes, but also been an insult, like we've said, school days again.
Well, you know what? I think one thing is clear from this discussion is that we don't have to worry so much about Trump anymore. I mean, maybe the worry is a more long distance worry. A worry is a more remote worry. He's not on the headlines and on Twitter and turning everything up every day. But let me ask you this, and this is the last word because we're almost out of time. The news seems a little slower. Maybe it's just me, but I just don't think there's as much news. What's the news coming this week, next week for you? What do you expect is going to happen, politically in the country with respect to all these things we've been discussing over the next couple of weeks? Or is it just a waiting game right now and there's nothing much really happening?
Well, I think that there's a lot happening, and I think the Russians are going to have their leaders going to have something to say. I think that there's a lot of discussion about Taiwan and Hong Kong, and the Chinese have also put us on notice that that's off limits. So that kind of going on. So China and Russia are looking kind of alike and trying to put us.
So you're suggesting that we're going to move to global issues And Winston, I mean, if I see another courtroom scene, another, 4 or 5 day experience in the press over some racist demonstration, one way or the other, to me, we have too much of that in the news and too little of what really counts in terms of the future of the country. What are your thoughts about that? What do you think is going to happen in the next week or two that will affect the future of the country?
The trial is part of this, Jay. That trial is part of the reconciliation. That trial is part of our understanding of a greater awareness. That trial is showing us how we have failed and where we need to do better. And it's actual and it's metaphorical. And we have a leader who is also leading the way. And Pete Buttigieg, who's in charge of transportation now, massive infrastructure that they're looking at. They say he's great. He's meeting with Republicans. He's crossing the aisle in ways I haven't heard of people doing that in years. And of course, he's super likable. He's young. He's cute. So that's easy. But he's also saying, how much pork would you like, and what cut would you like? Because I got the knife and I got the plates.
Well, that goes to the point of we're back to business as usual. This is what happens in Congress. This is what has happened for the past hundreds of years.
Normal behavior.
Normal behavior.
Normalizing.
Let's horse trade.
Yes.
And that's a good sign, but the public doesn't necessarily see those discussions.
We're not there yet, but we're getting there because we're normalizing normalcy, and we're getting back there. There's so much damage to undo, but Joe Biden is just on the path. He's not taking the bait. He's
doing really well with the possibilities that are available to him. Okay, Tim, you've heard it all now. You've heard all these creative ideas, all these remarkable profundities. So maybe you could summarize it for us on the way out.
Okay, well, I just heard Winston say, and I love the term normalized normacy. And Joe Biden said about our relationship with Russia, again, stable Joe. And that is, he's quoted to say he wants a stable and predictable relationship with Russia. Well, what didn't we have as predictability with the last administration? Predictability. It's a nice thing for Russia to be able to say, I can predict what the United States is going to respond to. And it's like a chess game. I can actually predict this player and what moves he's going to put those chess pieces on the board. What a refreshing thought that is. And vice versa. We can predict Russia. And that way we don't get into a surprise. And I think this troop buildup will be resolved. But it's scary. And I agree with Winston that, if I lived in part of Crimea, I might want to temporarily move to the other side. So it's the stability that I think is the operative word here as we move forward in this week, next week, and the week thereafter. Stability. And Joe Biden brings that to the table.
Yeah,
and his administration.
Let me offer one other thought about that. It's not only stability now, it's showing the United States, including the base, showing the world this is possible. We can have stability and predictability. And it's the real American governmental culture, and it's the one you need to follow in the future, whether it's Biden or anyone else. Tim Apicella, Winston Welch, Stephanie Dalton, thank you so much, you guys. You always brighten my Thursdays and my Wednesdays. Aloha.